Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for attending the industry webinar number 3 for our NVES, or New Vehicle Efficiency Standards Regulator. I'm Karen Ajar, I am the NVES Regulator, and I welcome you today. I'd like to just start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands on which I'm calling this meeting today, and I'm in Canberra on Ngunnawal country. Pay my respects to the elders past and present, and really recognise their continuing connection and care for the country that I'm privileged to work on. So today we have a very exciting session. Just a few pieces of housekeeping for everybody before I hand over to the people who are going to be taking you through the content. Just like last webinar, if you joined us, we're using Slido today. We found it to be a really effective way for people to be able to pose questions at any point in time throughout our sessions. So please do use that Slido function if you have any questions for us. You'll find that we have got you on mute, so that people don't accidentally come off mute and have those interruptions to the presentations. Each one of the slides actually has the Slido entry points in the bottom of the slide, and also I think that you've just seen it pop into our chat, so if you need to, you can just click on that link that's in the chat and jump into Slido, and that will be open throughout the course of the whole of the session, so please feel free to pop in a question at any point in time. Please also, you probably have a warning, but so you're aware that this webinar is being recorded, and we will share this back with you later. And the other thing to mention is, of course, today was a really great, exciting day with the release of the Rover 9.3 pieces, which included the NVES fields going live. There will be a Rover Release 9.3 webinar run by our RVSA industry colleagues on Thursday, the 29th of May. That's from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. We will include the details of that webinar and our post-webinar correspondence. We really encourage you to attend that webinar to become familiar with those NVES fields in the Rover or RAV system. But we won't be focusing on it today. Today we really want to give you the practical sort of pieces to be thinking about your preparedness for 1 July, which is coming up very quickly. And so I'm going to be quiet in a minute. I'm just going to introduce my colleague. Now, many of you will have met previously my Director of Regulation and Performance, and that was Dave Beck. Dave has actually left the department, but I'm very pleased to be able to introduce you to Nicola Hall, who has stepped in seamlessly into Dave's space. Nicola Hall is our new Director of the Performance and Regulations section. She's been with us for a few weeks, so is coming up to speed very, very quickly, but I'm very excited to be able to hand over to Nicola, who will walk you through some of the practicalities that you need to be thinking about to get ready. So thanks so much, everyone, and over to you, Nicola.
Thanks, Karen. And I think I have to say, I'm only on my learner's license at the moment. I feel like the team here and the audience, you'd at least be on your provisionals. So you will have to bear with me, but hopefully I can get through this and impart some knowledge that's going to be useful to everyone. So thank you for spending your time today joining us at this. And we really look forward to getting to meet you. All right, so the object, though, of the first, I guess, section of this webinar that we're going to give today is about operational readiness. And I'm now leading a small team of very capable officers who are going to become account managers for everybody who's a regulated entity in NVES, and help you through the processes and the things we have to do to make sure everybody is compliant. So you're going to have a helping hand, but we thought as well we'd start with a little checklist for everybody to consider. So next slide, please. Right, so when we were getting together and we're thinking about all the things that we really want people to keep in mind this early, sort of, you know, just pre the data obligations coming into place from the 1st of July, we thought about it, and these are the questions that we thought, if you can answer all these questions affirmatively and tick all these boxes, you're in a pretty good place. So we start with role awareness. Have you got all the right business units aware of and ready to support NVES activities? And do you have a central contact for NVES? So in coming weeks, my team will be reaching out to you and as an account manager and finding out who the best person, the best central contact is for your regulated entity to talk to about all matters NVES. So the next section that we really thought about was data and assurance. And I'm going to talk to this a bit more later on in the webinar today, but these are the basics. And let us know if you think you've got these covered. Have you worked out how the NVES data will be collected? Have you considered additional record keeping and assurance processes for that data? And are you confident that you could respond quickly and appropriately if contacted by the NVES regulator with a question about data assurance? So lastly, but not least, strategic planning. And I think that's probably top of mind for all of you here. There's short-term changes. So we all know that the 1st of July is approaching, that you'll have to be, it'll be mandatory to report the 4 new NVES fields in the RAV submissions, but also the longer-term implications of NVES, which I'm sure that's why you're all here today, and they'll be top of mind for you and for your business as the years progress and NVES progresses with it. So also, are we satisfied that our business structure and current RAV arrangement suits NVES? So you'll hear a lot, the NVES staff will talk about regulated entities, and that is sort of BTA holders under the NVES regulation, and they are really the point of compliance and the point of liability for the NVES Act. So I understand that there's a lot of different variations of business structure here. So it's important how you understand how the framework of NVES works with that structure of yours and the sort of permissions you'll need and the access to data that people will need, different people will need in different sort of entities within your corporate structure. So next slide, please. Or can I do it? Have I got control? Okay, great, thanks. All right, so this is a bit, we just thought we'd make this a bit of fun. Oh, sorry, can we go back to the readiness scoring? Just quickly. Great, so we just thought this would be a bit of fun because we're not all serious. If you can answer most of those questions, if you're up around 7, you're absolutely so ready for NVES. If you've got a score of 5 to 6, you're definitely on the right track, but maybe there's a few things in the previous slide that you can think about. If you've got a score of 2 to 4, you can reach out to us and we're really willing to help. And then if you've got a score of 1 or 0, definitely give us a call straight away or get in contact with us and we can help you and bring you up to date. So we will actually be having a face-to-face webinar seminar in Sydney on the 12th of June. So we'll definitely make sure you've got access to all that information and we can give you as much help as possible. Karen, you've just come online. Is there anything you want to add? Okay, cool. All right, so I've heard that there's a little bit of a lag with slide changes. So if we could move to the next slide, that would be great. Fantastic. So just on the theme of readiness, we thought it would also be really good to make sure people are aware of what they really need to be ready for now, but what is further off in the future. So when you're thinking about how NVES is going to impact you, really those short-term changes are on this page that you have to be concerned with in the near future. So we're in the little blue period now, we're pre-July, and then as you would all know quite well, from the 1st of July, the mandatory data reporting on NVES fields starts. Now, a really important, I guess, milestone for NVES and for you as our sort of digital services users will be when our NVES portal goes live around September. When that goes live, you'll also be able to apply for an NVES registry account if you'd like to open one. And then you can also begin managing who gets to access those that account that will have NVES units in it if you are credited with units at the end of a given compliance year. So that is due. We're building those systems right now, and we're expecting them to go live around September. And so until then, you have the RAB to enter data into, and you'll also have some tools inside of Rover, which can help you to reconcile NVES data and have a look at it and export NVES data. So that's this calendar year. As you know, the compliance period for the first year of NVES is shorter. It's 6 months only because it started on the 1st of July. So it finishes on the 31st of December, and the 1st of January marks the beginning of the second year of NVES. However, the second year starts and you'll start entering data that is brought into the second year of calculations for NVES. In the background, during January, at the regulator, we'll be doing a lot of calculations, and we'll be preparing to issue all of the regulated entities with an interim emissions value and any associated units. And we expect those to be released in February of that year. So that is when you'll get your kind of score for the previous year and any units that you have been able to be credited for that performance. It's also when unit management can begin. So although we're opening up and people will be able to see and have a registry account from September, there won't actually be anything in it to begin with until the first year is over and people have actually created units. So yeah, I hope it's not going to be too much of an anticlimax for people when we open it. Excellent. Next slide, please. Great. So when we put our mind to thinking about long-term, what are the key actions and dates that we really wanted to highlight and make sure you're familiar with? And please, if you're not, reach out to us and we can help you get your head around any of these or explain everything, or maybe fill in some information if we sort of brought it up to too high a level. So we have the second year of compliance ends on the 31st of December 2026. And within the NVES framework, you'll see that it isn't actually until the end of the third year of NVES, year 3, so the 31st of December, you've got until then to, if you're deciding to manage your obligations for NVES through managing units, you've got until all that time until the end of December 2027 to purchase, transact, extinguish units through your registry account to meet the requirements of your IEV for the first compliance year of NVES. So you'll see that in the beginning of the second month of the fourth year, the February in the fourth year, is when actually you'll get the first final emissions value for 2025. And that is the, I guess, the compliance cutoff for that year, this first year of NVES. So after that, that will be your zero, or you have to meet zero by then. So your emissions value for 2025 must meet zero. If it doesn't, pretty soon after the final emissions value is released, you will be receiving either an infringement with a cost of $50 per unit, anything above the FEV of 0. And yeah, that infringement notice will sort of be delivered to you and you can choose to pay it. If you don't choose to pay it, however, the full penalty that's in the Act will apply for a regulated entity. So instead of $50 per unit, it will be $100 per unit. So Karen, is there anything that you'd like to talk about there? Or we think that just reading the media, I think there's been a bit of confusion about this. So it's something we wanted to be really clear about in this webinar.
Yeah, Nicola, I think that the one thing just to add is with those infringement notices, the question has come up to us before. What happens if I need longer than the 28 days? 28 days is an amount of time that the infringement notice is from us issuing it to you being due to pay it, set by legislation. What happens if we can't make that time? There are some provisions in it's called the Regulatory Powers Act. It's the act that we actually use to issue these infringements, that allows for you, under certain circumstances, to ask us for an extension. So that there are various possibilities. We will definitely give you more information and talk about that as we get closer to the time. But, you know, ultimately, if you don't make that payment, then as Nicola said, we move on to further actions, which then obviously go from an infringement amount to a penalty amount.
Great, thanks, Karen. And yeah, we're sort of really concentrating on the first things first for us with operations. So that is a little way away, but it's still really important to think about. So we thought we'd mention it now. Another thing that is worth mentioning on this slide is that, as you'll see, the NVES starts off with this sort of delayed compliance period. It's giving everybody a chance to get up to speed and decide how they're going to meet their obligations under NVES. But from 2028, the FEVs will come annually. So the following year, there'll be another FEV for 2026 and so on. Excellent. All right. I think we can move on from this slide now. Great. So more of the stuff that I enjoy talking about, which is how we can help you and to give you guys some clarity, because it is a little bit confusing, maybe a little bit confusing at first. You're all very used to the RVS teams and how they operate. The good news is if you have, and all the things that they help you with, they're still there to help you with all of that stuff. Including any, you'll see here, any data corrections that need to be made on the RAV, that even if it includes NVES data, that still goes through the normal corrections process with that team. So you can just continue as you have been and use those processes for any of those sorts of corrections or questions. Now, where we come in as the regulator and as an operations team is that we can give you advice and help on your obligations under the new Act, because it is all a bit new to everybody and can be complicated. We can help you with NVES calculations because they aren't in in Rover or RAV, they're actually in our portal. So if you've got questions about how a calculation has come out the way it's come out, it should all be very straightforward because it's just going to be sort of coded into our system, but we'll be there to answer any queries about that performance that you can see in your portal view. And unit registry management, of course, so any questions about the registry and your account in the registry and your units and any transactions that you would like to make or extinguishments of units. We're also very happy to take general NVES inquiries relevant to NVES, obviously, not to the RVS, because there's another team that does that, and we won't be able to help you with their matters. And yeah, you'll be able to reach out to us through an account manager. So at the moment, please just use the email nvesregulator@infrastructure.gov.au, and there will be a central phone line that regulated entities can use to contact the team directly, so you won't have to go through a switchboard. Great. All right, I think that's me.
Thanks, Nicola. And I'm going to jump in. We've had our first question on Slido. Thank you to whoever was the first person in there. And the question is, can penalty units issued as an IEV in February 1st, 2026 be extinguished directly with the government before December 31st, 2027? I think if I understand the question correctly, it's saying, do I have to wait until the end of the period before I can actually true up or use my units? And the short answer is you can actually action straight away. So there's no delay. If you get issued an IEV, you have a number that's not zero. So you need to do something, you need to manage for units, and you trade for units or you create units in the next year. You can absolutely create them and actually immediately ask us to extinguish them against your IEV or the previous year's IEV. So you have 3 years for every unit that's created from the time they're created to use them. You can use them straight away, you can hold them for the next year or the year after that. So, so I think I've understood that question correctly. If I've got that wrong, please feel free to come back into Slido and ask the question again, or follow up with an email at the end of this session, and we will try and answer the real question if I've misunderstood. My apologies. So we have one more question, Nicola. I'm going to pass this one to you. And
Yeah,
the question
great.
is,
Thank you.
we're yet to receive a call from the account manager. When and with whom shall we follow up?
You shouldn't need to follow up, but you can definitely reach out to us at the email address that was in the last slide, and we'll definitely have contact details all over this presentation for you. But yes, we have started. We've started with people who maybe haven't been as sort of engaged with regulated entities, that we haven't been as engaged in previous NVES webinars and engagements, because we think that they might need our help first. So if we haven't contacted you, it's probably because we're not worried about you, but we will get around to it. So definitely I'm aiming for mid-June, we will have reached out to everybody. However, if you do want to get in contact with us before then and you've got lots of burning questions, please just feel free to drop us an email, and we'll assign someone to you right away.
Thanks, Nicola. Team, should I ask and answer the next Slido question, which I think probably fits into this session? I think I will. I'll just make the call. So the question is, will IEV become fluid from February 1st, 2026, or will it be date stamped based on the compliance year? So your IEV, your interim emissions value, you will have an interim emissions value for each compliance year, and it will be for that year. So they don't become fluid. Each year gets its new IEV, and so we will have a way to define for you, for example, the first one you receive will be your 2025 IEV, the second one you receive will be your 2026 IEV, and so on and so forth moving forward. So they're not fluid, but you start to have more than one as time goes on. Hopefully I've also got that question right. Thanks. Keep those questions coming through. The Slido is working beautifully. We really appreciate the engagement with it. And thanks, Nicola, for your piece. And so we will now hand over to a familiar face for many of you who've been dealing with Anthony for much longer than me, to give us an update on how we're going on the business system designs. Anthony.
Thank you, Karen. Yes, and look, you know, it has been a while for those who've been on this journey. It's useful to know that it's now just clocked over 1 year since the legislation was passed, and I think we started our first industry implementation discussion. I think was in the first coldest day of Canberra winter, which was in July. So yes, we've come a long way since then. Now we have account managers. And a whole lot of functionality. So I'm going to talk about the business systems, particularly the IT, and just bring you up to date with that. So if we move to the next slide, please. Okay, so where are we? As of today, we have Rover Release 9.3 has been deployed, and that includes the addition of 4 new fields to RAV for NVES. And I'll just pause there for a moment, because I know you your companies deal with the whole of Rover and the entering of vehicles onto the RAV. Of course, as of today, there are 5 new fields on RAV. Of those 5, 4 of those are for NVES. They are the vehicle type, the CO2, oh my gosh, I got to get this right. The MIRO, massive running order, and the rated towing capacity. The 5th field that's gone on to RAV today is motive power, and that's not an NVES field. So I'm just going to talk today about the 4 NVES fields. So they've gone live. What that means, of course, is that those 4 NVES fields are voluntary up to 30th of June, and then from 1st of July they must be filled out for vehicles that are covered by the NVES Act. If you're looking for details of what are the vehicle types, classes that come under NVES, and the detail of each of those fields, they are in the current RAV guide, which will be available on the department's website. And I'll come and repeat that information at the end of my segment today. What I might also mention about the early go live, what is that for really? And really what this period is for, from now until the 30th of June, is really for you. And it's for your systems developers to ensure that your systems are talking to our system and that we can get all the bugs sorted out. And principally what uploading NVES fields to the RAV as of today through to the 30th of June will enable you to do is to do two things. One, test the validation rules that we have employed in Rover Release 9.3 so that you'll know those will pass when you come to 1 July onwards. The other thing it will let you do is to upload bulk submissions to RAV with NVES fields in them. So if you have live submissions with a whole range of data inputs, including NVES, you can validate those NVES fields in bulk and get immediate response through the usual messaging that comes back and is generated by our Rover system. Can I just say too, if you're uploading vehicles that are not covered by NVES, trailers, trucks, things that are not NVES class vehicles, then leave the NVES vehicles blank. They will be sufficient, both from now through and certainly from 1 July onwards. Leave them blank if they're not NVES covered vehicles. Okay, so what's the next big thing happening? Well, 1 July, of course, mandatory compliance with the NVES Act and an assessment of those data that you enter commences. The data you enter or that gets entered onto the RAV from you from 1 July onwards will count towards your 2025 IEV. And as Nicola mentioned, the results of your 2025 IEV and any units that might come with that will be notified to you in February 2026. And the same will apply for each year's block of performance thereafter. I might also mention too, this is a small footnote, but there are a number of regulated entities for NVES who won't come under the pre-approval system that Rover has available. So if you're one of, I think it's 9 companies that when you upload or you submit data to RAV, you have to pay on a submission by submission basis to have that data then entered on RAV, then you need to be aware that if you're entering data between now and 30th of June and you haven't paid for it by 30th of June, you could unintendedly end up with those NVES fields being counted towards your 2025 IEV. So just be aware of that, and our account managers, I understand, are in the process of reaching out to talk to you specifically about that. Okay, moving on. 3rd of July is our next immediate milestone coming up, and that'll be the date where we will delete the data that was entered before 1 July. So any data, any NVES fields entered into RAV before 1 July will be deleted, so the record is cleaned off of all the essentially test information to help you verify that you're on track to be able to comply from 1 July onwards. So rest assured, the data you'll provide now, if you choose to, up to 30th of June, will be deleted from the RAV from that date onwards. Okay, I think that's about all I want to say there. Next slide, please. I want to turn a little bit to the test environment that we set up and have had running since the 2nd of January. I know a number of you, in fact 30 entities, regulated entities, has taken advantage of this. So this was pre us getting the RAV changes live and ready for you. We set up a test environment separate to the RAV, which could accept submissions in RAV format, including the NVES fields, as a way to check the validations. And from that, we did learn some great lessons, which were folded into the actual Rover 9.3 changes that we've made and released today. The results of that are that we did have 30 entities that have participated in this test environment across 39 vehicle makes, which we think represents about 85% of the RAV volume that NVES would carry in a typical year. And out of that, we've garnered some lessons learned, which, as I said, we've built into the RAV. So maybe if we go to the next slide, and I'll recap those lessons. Okay, so look, the main thing, this gives you a bit of a summary of the entities that have submitted and where we've landed with actually now most uploads to the test environment are now succeeding. The big thing that's changed, that's allowed for that, is the getting the vehicle type right. And look, I'll let you read this information at your leisure. We will be sending these slides out, I understand, with the webinar, so you can come back to them at a future time. But if we can go to the next slide, please. Great. This captures really what we've done, going from the test environment to the live Rover RAV 9.3 release. So with the testing environment, we enforce validation rules for vehicle type, which were limited to the list that's in the top sort of light coloured boxes: type 1 vehicle, type 2 vehicle, exempt vehicle, not applicable, or blank. And what we've learned from the test environment is to inject a bit more flexibility, and we've done that by also accepting not just type 1 vehicle, for example, but also just type 1 or type 2. So that's made a difference. And so what we've got now in the Rover RAV that's gone live today is that we will accept NVES fields for the vehicle type with those earlier validations. In addition, the further validation rules, which are in that bottom part of the column in the darker text. At this point, we're anticipating the test environment will remain open till 30th of June. So that gives plenty of time if you've not taken advantage of that. There's no jeopardy in using the test environment. It's purely for your use to check your validations. The one thing or two things to remember about the test environment that has been superseded in RAV that's gone live today is that the size of test submissions is much smaller. It's only the first 20 vehicles that our test environment will read and validate. Also, it doesn't contain the additional validations rules that I mentioned now in the RAV. I think that kind of wraps up that slide. So I'll go to the next one, please. Yeah, next slide, please.
Anthony, while we're waiting for the slides to catch up, I might just call out to say I think you've answered this particular question directly in that last slide, but just to confirm, is the test environment still available for use? As per your last slide, yes, with all those caveats that you had noted.
Yes. That's right.
Fantastic. And if I might just add one other piece to this, the next question was, how confident are you that data deletion from the RAV will have no unintended consequences?
Okay, very good question and very important. So we have tested the data deletion function to ensure that there are no other intended consequences. It's operating only on the NVES fields that were entered onto RAV up to 30th of June. We're happy with the test results.
If I could add to that, Anthony, you and the team, the various teams who work on these things, came together and provided me an extremely comprehensive plan about how we go through the process. And there's also a whole lot of checks and balances that happen immediately after we've undertaken that delete to make sure that that nothing untoward has happened. If it does happen to go awry, which we don't expect, we have very high confidence that this will work, but we are able to very quickly roll back to the version and then figure out what went wrong and correct it later. So thanks for that, Anthony. Back to you.
Okay. Look, I just want to provide this one wrap-up slide. So just to reiterate, where can you find the definitions of the 4 new NVES fields? They are in the RAV guide. That is currently uploaded onto the department's website and maintained by Road Vehicle Safety Standards Division. Those rules have gone through a whole process with you, industry, to get them in the best state. I'd like to particularly note the IT working group that has come together to help me and the team work through the design of the IT systems. Also, we did get feedback on 2 of the NVES fields, the Miro and the rated towing capacity, which we originally intended might have 1 decimal point, but we were well assured by industry, and I took this to the IT working group as well, that whole numbers will do the trick, and that is now the validation rules for those 2 figures that will be employed in the RAV. I think that's about it. Look, just to note too, there are some clarifications of definitions in the offing. They're coming to you through the policy teams in the department. I know that those of you who've been involved with the emissions testing working group will be well on top of how those are progressing. And we're happy to take any further questions about that. But at this point, I'll leave this part of the conversation here, and I will throw it back open to, unless there are any further questions.
There is one more question, Anthony, if I could throw to you. Yes. Do NB1 vehicles need to complete the NVES fields? My understanding is they're covered by the Act, but currently have an exemption.
Okay, very good question. If you are an NVES exempt vehicle, so you fit under the exemption determinations the Minister made late last year, then what you put in the NVES field type is exempt, and you leave the other fields blank. Okay.
Fantastic. Thanks, Anthony. And I'm sure that there may be more questions come through, but we'll come back to questions for you at the end of the next session. So passing back to Nicola to talk about one of my favourite topics, and you might laugh, but I'll say genuinely this is something I love, making sure your data's accurate.
Okay, so everybody, full disclosure, I am new, and so I think on a scale of 1 to 7 in terms of operational readiness, I'm about a 5 with this section. So bear with me, everybody, and just hammer us with questions if none of this makes sense. But also there's a lot of other people here on the line who can probably answer your questions in this workshop as well. So yeah, that was my introduction to this section. Next slide. Not as positive as Karen's. Excellent. Well, very topical question that was just asked, and thank you for your answer, Anthony. I am learning with everyone else, and to maintain data accuracy, first things first, really good place to start is to know your vehicle types and what is exempt and what's not. So as you'll see here, we've kind of tried to make a sort of a simple pictorial kind of narrative about what it looks like at the moment, with type 1, type 2 covered under the NVES, which are obviously light passenger vehicles and light commercial vehicles. And although the legislation has them as a gross vehicle mass under 4.5 tonnes, at the moment there is an exemption for vehicles that fit into those categories that are over 3.5. So if it's 3.5 or below, it is now mandatory under NVES to enter that data, and they will fall into the vehicle type 1 or type 2 category. And as you'll see here, there are, for clarity, we've included other vehicle categories that are exempt at the moment. So next slide. So the next part of data accuracy, of course, is, and what we've touched on already during this presentation, is knowing the definitions for the data that you're entering, and understanding where you're getting that data from, and being confident in it. So we've I won't go through the definitions word by word, because I'm sure that everyone here is also already aware of them. But you'll notice that for the CO2 emissions number as well, we know that there's a certain set of vehicles that might not have the NEDC value because they've been tested under a different testing procedure, and there is a conversion factor that they'll need to use, that approved conversion formula to get that value. So, and I think that also Anthony has covered that at the moment there will be we're anticipating maybe a change in the definition to rated towing capacity, but that will come in time. Next slide. Right, so I think that we might not have taken this slide out. So we've got 2 slides of the same describing, yeah, great. So I'm choosing to look at this one because I was an old scientist in a previous life, and this one is a bit clearer to me. But we just wanted to show you an example of the calculations that will occur in the back end to the data that you enter into the RAV, to actually come up with an emissions value for a vehicle. So as you'll see here, I think can we continue to click so we have the full screen? So this formula is in the legislation and very transparent. So you can actually use this already with your data to work out your emissions value for a single vehicle, and you can sum that up to come up with your emissions performance for your point in the year. So we do anticipate that when we do have an NVES portal, sometime onwards from September, we'll be able to have that calculation potentially with the NVES information available to you to look at. But this is basically the calculation that is at the back end and goes towards all of the vehicles that are added up for your final IEV and at the end of a compliance year. So maybe move on to the next slide. Oh, we have a hand up.
Ashley, I might ask if you can pop your questions through on the Slido piece, just so we can come back to it. We've got a number backed up now that we'll need to come back to, just that we've got everybody switched off. We can't actually turn your mic on at this point. All right, well, I'll just keep on going. Yeah, fantastic. We'll answer all the questions at the end, I think. So we've got a few more tips and practical points here for people about maintaining NVES data integrity. So of course, you'll want to be understanding and knowing your CO2 test conversions.
we highly recommend, or this is the advice of our data specialist, that you consider process automation opportunities where you can, just to sort of like limit the, I guess, the chance of any sort of fat finger errors or manual errors. It's really important and is helpful for organisations to appoint an accountable officer for this sort of record keeping and knowledge, technical knowledge. So if there's someone at your organisation who's responsible for NVES data quality and compliance, that will probably be a big advantage. And also becomes a primary contact, can help us resolve questions about your data and any concerns really quickly and painlessly. Also, it's important to remember to ensure traceability. So embedding good record keeping processes is great. Some of the things in other industries, some of the sort of documents in other industries that I've seen that are collecting emissions data, for instance, sort of companies keep their own basis of preparation, which becomes like a central document. It just documents how they've come to how they do their calculations and how they source and keep and manage and store their data. That is really helpful and from an internal point of view, because it captures that corporate knowledge, but it also becomes very helpful if we have questions as well, and there's documentation that's to hand that you can use to refer to that shows all of that working. Also, finally, and this is just a suggestion, of course, but the sorts of schemes that have this sort of obligation management, independent audits or third-party verification may be something that you consider down the track that could be helpful. And actually, so before we move on from this slide, I do want to give you one other sort of key takeaway, that data integrity is very important. So there's practices on your side that will help ensure the integrity of the NVES, the standard, but also we will be doing data assurance to underpin our regulatory activities. Don't be surprised if we reach out with questions. We're going to start to look at the data. We'll be using reference sets, but we may have questions as we build our knowledge. And really the ultimate goal of our work in this area is to make sure that we're applying the rules of the NVES equitably and fairly. So yeah, we'd be really grateful for you to, in any future interactions, to be open and share information with us that will help us achieve that goal. So just wanted to leave on that note.
Thanks, Nicola. Are we moving on to this last slide?
Yeah. One more note. I forgot about this one. So this is just from my days in another regulatory agency collecting data from companies. One of the biggest concerns people have is, oh my goodness, what happens if I discover a mistake? Because we're all human and we all make mistakes. So as I touched on before, if it's a mistake with the data that you've entered into RAV, it's really good if you find out about it as early as possible before the interim emissions value is calculated. So if you can jump on it inside of that compliance year and get it fixed up through the normal corrective process, that is fantastic. After an IEV calculator, after the IEV is calculated, it does become a bit of a harder process and a bit more complicated to fix. And we do recommend it's something that you contact your account manager about. So in general, though, I think the principle here that I want to get across is that regulated entities that are quick to take corrective action on incorrect information and seek our guidance are always going to be supported. So don't feel shy about coming forward if you've made a mistake. As I said, we all do. It's really common and we're here to help. So yeah. Thanks very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nicola. So we actually have quite a number of questions in the Slido for a number of our presenters. So not just Nicola and Anthony, I'll introduce a new presenter as well. So if we could just pop over to the Slido Q&A slide, so just to remind people you still have an opportunity to pop questions you have in. But I might start with one which I think is a pretty straightforward question, and so this one's going to go to you, Anthony. And that's the question is, can an NVES exempt vehicle be uploaded as an NVES vehicle?
Look, indeed it can and needs to be. However, you can only refill out the vehicle type and enter the word exempt vehicle or exempt. All the other fields, NVES fields that is, need to be left blank. If you enter data into the other fields for an exempt vehicle, they will generate error messages and you'll need to blank them out. So for exempt vehicles, only enter the vehicle type as exempt and leave the other three NVES fields blank.
Thanks, Anthony. And I might add to that answer as well to say, if you do enter a vehicle type for something that's exempt and then go forward and enter all your data, that's part of that quality assurance process Nicola was explaining earlier. You should expect that you'll probably get a contact call from us to have a talk about what's happened there. We're obviously looking at not just the data that's come in from a completeness perspective, but also to look at the validity of that data. So if we see a vehicle in there that is in the exempt category, we'll be having a conversation with you about what we're seeing. But ideally, you do exactly what Anthony has just told you to do, which is pop in exempt, and then there's no problem because you won't be able to put the rest of the data and you just stop there and keep moving forward. Great, thanks for that, Anthony. I might introduce one of my colleagues, Lulu, who many of you may know, who is from our policy team on the side. There's a couple of questions, Lulu, that I'm going to ask you to field, and they're asked slightly differently, so I'll read them both out, but I think they're actually coming to the same thing. So the first question is, when do we expect the Minister to sign off on the reclassified definition of rated towing capacity? And the second question is there any expected time frame for determining if there will be mass adjustments for MIRO of an incomplete cab chassis vehicle?
Yeah, thank you, Karen. So yes, those ones are both related because we are proposing to change the rated towing capacity definition and clarify what figure you should put into the NVES data field for MIRO for cab chassis vehicles as well. Both of those are going to be in a RAV determination amendment instrument. Unfortunately, I can't preempt the timing of the Minister's decision, but we do know that she is mindful and minded to sign off on this instrument and that she is aware that it is a critical decision relating to the start of NVES compliance from 1st of July. So we're hoping that it is considered as soon as possible. Unfortunately, I don't have a time frame, but once it is considered and decision made, will be, as Karen's team has said, will be out letting sort of this group and other sort of people know as quickly as possible.
Thank you so much, Lulu. And before I let you slide back into the group, there's one new question that, well, it's not really a question, it's more a statement, but I think it relates to some work that you and your team have been progressing. And it says, from 2028, when Euro 6D comes into effect, I assume all manufacturers will start measuring CO2 based on WLTP. However, the NVES targets are still based on NEDC.
Yes, so we are mindful of that, and in fact, the Euro 6D sort of standards come into effect for new vehicles from the end of this year, and so we are developing a conversion procedure that suppliers can use to convert WLTP figures and also US test cycle figures into NEDC for the purposes of the NVES.
Thank you so much, Lulu, for that answer. That's great. And I know that more will be coming out publicly. So when decisions are made, what I can say is that we will be publishing information and guidance and detail for all of our regulated entities as soon as we're able. So we're prepared in the background so that as soon as the Minister has made her decision, we'll be able to get some information out to you very, very quickly. Thanks, Lulu. There's a couple of more questions here, so I'm just making sure I'm getting through the right ones. The next one is probably one for me more than anyone else, and that question is, can we get a formal statement regarding the ability to correct data that is submitted up until the IEV/FEV closure dates? So yes, you will be able to get some formal statement that will come in the form of various information, guidance and directions that we put out through to you as the regulators, the NVES regulator. So these things will come. I can say, and you've got obviously on these slides, that I think we've covered this in some of our earlier both webinars and our previous face-to-face, and we will continue to talk about this. Our desire, our intention and our approach is that we want the correct data, and as Nicola said, where you have discovered that something's either not right, or in fact there might be multiple questions, or there might be a change along the way to how you're allowed to calculate, you absolutely will be able to go into and follow the processes to update your data as you would with any other correction. Our real desire is to get the most accurate numbers we can before that IEV is issued. That's in everyone's best interests. We will work with you to make sure that that's able to be happening. So still a few more minutes, and so I will keep going to questions for another couple of minutes. There may be a couple of questions we don't get to, in which case we will try and follow those up outside of this. There's a couple of questions that were relating to some of the slides, and a particular question around clarifying the fuel capacity definition for MIRO, and that had a reference to ADR 111/00, where the definition is at least 90% of fuel. If you're following along on the Slido, you will see that our moderator has actually included the ADR definition. That is the definition that applies. It is as per the ADR. So apologies for any confusion with us using the term a full tank. That's not what it is. It is actually as per the ADR 111 definition. But Anthony, you've popped up. Do you have anything to add to that, or to make sure that I've been clear?
Oh, I had a response to one of the other slides, I realised. So I'll pop back down again. Sorry.
Not at all. Well, how about I hand to you? You go for that.
Okay. Look, there was a question about slide 19, I think. And is it possible to just flip
I can
to
read
slide...
that out to you. Slide 19, is this per vehicle rounding, not per VTA or per VTA holder rounding after summing all VINs? So if we could get just, there we go. Anthony.
That's what I thought it was. Yes, I'm pretty sure. That's right. So this example that Nicola gave, it's a really good example of how the emissions target will be figured out for each individual vehicle. And the question relates to the decimal points that have been that come with that target. So this relates to the vehicle by vehicle calculation. When the IEV is calculated, all the differences between the CO2 and the emissions target for each vehicle will be added up and then rounded once. So that clarifies that. We will be releasing information to help you develop your back of house tracking of the IEV calculations so that your numbers match our numbers. But just to give you a shorthand at this point, the example you see there is for an individual vehicle. When we calculate the IEV, we'll be adding up all the differences between these targets and their CO2 and then rounding the result, and that will be your IEV for the year. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that question and answer, Anthony. It's a fun one, Anthony, and I worked through some head scratching on our math in recent times. Look, we are 1 minute away from the end of our session. We do have a number of questions left unanswered. The one I wanted to jump to just before I close is just the question of when will the detailed guidance that was mentioned in our previous workshop materials be announced. So that was the guidance that we had talked about infringements and penalties. So thank you for the question. Look, we have turned our attention to some of the other more sort of time critical and important pieces, also partly because I think we have answered very clearly about the penalty versus infringement question in a number of other ways. So we will come back to that guidance, but there's some other guidance and some other information that we think is more important right now for us to get out the door. So we have switched a bit of our energy to make sure we can get some more detail and information coming out sooner. So I can't give you an exact date. It will come, but just to confirm for everybody, as we have said in a number of different places, the infringement notices that you will be issued by the NVES regulator if you don't manage to meet your FEV for a year will be $50 for each infringement. Nicola, did you want to jump in there?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say, in lieu of detailed guidance, because we do want to make sure we get a really good quality guidance document out to everybody, we are always available. Regulated entities will have account managers. People can reach out to us in our email address and ask us any questions, and we'll get back to people and engage with people where they need support.
Thanks so much, Nicola. Look, we are at time. We're going to need to wrap up. There are a couple of questions we didn't get to. We will do our best to try and answer those questions as we move forward. We really appreciate your engagement. And again, the questions coming through are really fantastic. They help us to make sure we're giving you the right information, but also helping us to think about what we need to prioritise in the background as we're both building and writing more of our guidance. So as per last time, please don't hesitate to follow up, as Nicola said, with any questions. For those of you who are regulated entities who haven't yet heard from your account manager, hold tight, they are coming. As Nicola said, we had to divide and conquer. We have started with the entities who we've had the least engagement with so far, but we will work to have all of the regulated entities knowing who your account manager is by around the middle of June. In the meantime, please continue to use that NVES regulator email address, and we will be in contact moving forward again. Also, just a last observation, we will be running our next in-person session, really targeting again our regulated entities around the middle of June. Just to be clear, that's building on some of the engagement that we've had previously. We're getting to increasing levels of detail, increasing examples and demonstrations of what's going forward. We know it's a big impost of both time and energy, but we really appreciate everybody engaging in those events. They've been really important ones. And today, so thank you again for making the time. We will try and get this, both the slides out to you very quickly and the recording of this event so that you'll be able to refer back to this as a piece of information. Thanks everybody again. Be safe, and we'll talk to you all soon.